Welcome to the NFP Podcast, where we explore the empowering world of natural family planning. I'm Amy Smith. Join me and my co-host Emily Appledorn each week. Together, we're here to dive deep into the science, the stories, and the spirituality behind NFP. Every week, we push back against the free love culture and advocate for a culture of responsible love, where intentionality and respect are at the forefront of family planning. Join us as we discuss everything from the practicalities of charting and fertility awareness to the profound impact NFP can have on relationships and communities. Whether you're new to NFP or a seasoned pro, our podcast is your go-to resource for honest conversations, expert insights, and real-life experiences. So grab a friend, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. This is the NFP Podcast. All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, everyone.
I feel like I have to say I'm recording from a remote location somewhere. And I have my usual green background. I'm traveling. I'm picking my son up from camp. So I'm in a hotel, and Emily and I are hoping that the internet service will hold out for us as we try to do this recording. So anyway, we are glad to be back, and we're continuing on with our Catechism read. So we're going to go through the section on matrimonial consent. And it's kind of broken up into two different parts. So we'll read through both full sections and then discuss if we have any thoughts. So do you want me to start, Emily?
Sure.
We didn't clarify that. Okay, I'll just start. Matrimonial consent. The parties to a marriage covenant are a baptized man and woman free to contract marriage, who freely express their consent. To be free, quote unquote, means not being under constraint and not impeded by any natural or ecclesiastical law.
The Church holds the exchange of consent between the spouses to be the indispensable element that makes the marriage. If consent is lacking, there is no marriage.
The consent consists in a human act by which the partners mutually give themselves to each other. I take you to be my wife. I take you to be my husband. This consent that binds the spouses to each other finds its fulfillment in the two becoming one flesh.
The consent must be an act of the will of each of the contracting parties, free of coercion or grave external fear. No human power can substitute for this consent. If this freedom is lacking, the marriage is invalid.
For this reason, or for other reasons that render the marriage null and void, the Church, after an examination of the situation by the competent ecclesiastical tribunal, can declare the nullity of a marriage, i.e., that the marriage never existed. In this case, the contracting parties are free to marry, provided the natural obligations of a previous union are discharged.
The priest or deacon who assists at the celebration of a marriage receives the consent of the spouses in the name of the Church and gives the blessing of the Church. The presence of the Church's minister and also of the witnesses visibly expresses the fact that marriage is an ecclesial reality.
This is the reason why the Church normally requires that the faithful contract marriage according to the ecclesiastical form. Several reasons converge to explain this requirement. Sacramental marriage is a liturgical act. It is therefore appropriate that it should be celebrated in the public liturgy of the Church. Marriage introduces one into an ecclesial order and creates rights and duties in the Church between the spouses and towards their children. Since marriage is a state of life in the Church, certainty about it is necessary, hence the obligation to have witnesses. The public character of the consent protects the I do once given and helps the spouses remain faithful to it.
So that the I do of the spouses may be a free and responsible act, and so that the marriage covenant may have solid and lasting human and Christian foundations, preparation for marriage is of prime importance. The example and teaching given by parents and families remain the special form of this preparation. The role of pastors and of the Christian community as the family of God is indispensable for the transmission of the human and Christian values of marriage and family, and much more so in our era when many young people experience broken homes, which no longer sufficiently assure this initiation. It is imperative to give suitable and timely instruction to young people, above all in the heart of their own families, about the dignity of married love, its role and its exercise, so that having learned the value of chastity, they will be able at a suitable age to engage in honorable courtship and enter upon a marriage of their own.
Mixed marriages and disparity of cult. In many countries, the situation of a mixed marriage, a marriage between a Catholic and a baptized non-Catholic, often arises. It requires particular attention on the part of the couple and their pastor. A case of marriage with disparity of cult between a Catholic and a non-baptized person requires even greater circumspection.
Difference of confession between the spouses does not constitute an insurmountable obstacle for marriage when they succeed in placing in common what they have received from their respective communities and learn from each other the way in which each lives in fidelity to Christ. But the difficulties of mixed marriages must not be underestimated. They arise from the fact that the separation of Christians has not yet been overcome. The spouses risk experiencing the tragedy of Christian disunity even in the heart of their own home. Disparity of cult can further aggravate these difficulties. Differences about faith and the very notion of marriage, but also different religious mentalities, can become sources of tension in marriage, especially as regards the education of children. The temptation to religious indifference can then arise.
According to the law in force in the Latin Church, a mixed marriage needs for licity the express permission of ecclesiastical authority. In the case of disparity of cult, an express dispensation from this impediment is required for the validity of the marriage. This permission or dispensation presupposes that both parties know and do not exclude the essential ends and properties of marriage. Furthermore, that the Catholic party confirms the obligations, which have been made known to the non-Catholic party, of preserving his or her own faith and ensuring the baptism and education of the children in the Catholic Church.
Through ecumenical dialogue, Christian communities in many regions have been able to put into effect a common pastoral practice for mixed marriages. Its task is to help such couples live out their particular situation in the light of faith, overcome the tensions between the couple's obligations to each other and towards their ecclesial communities, and encourage the flowering of what is common to them in faith and respect for what separates them.
In marriages with disparity of cult, the Catholic spouse has a particular task, for the unbelieving husband is consecrated through his wife, and the unbelieving wife is consecrated through her husband. It is a great joy for the Christian spouse and the church if this consecration should lead to free conversion of the other spouse to the Christian faith. Sincere married love, the humble and patient practice of the family virtues, and perseverance in prayer can prepare the non-believing spouse to accept the grace of conversion. As someone who grew up in a home that my dad is an atheist and my mom is Catholic, and she kind of went in and out of practicing her faith when we were younger. We did get to receive all the sacraments, so that's a huge grace. But it's hard. And now being married with kids and having a spouse, and he and I are on the same page with our faith, and it's a primary, I mean, it's everything to us. And we still have struggles. Like I just know growing up, I remember I have the most vivid memory actually, Emily. I forget where we were living because I grew up as a military brat. I forget where we were living, but it was a very vivid memory. It was a time when my mom was practicing her faith, and she gathered us in my sister's room, and we were sitting on a bed. It probably was like a twin bed, you know. My mom's sitting there, and she's trying to lead us in a rosary, and it's at night, like before we're going to bed. And I'll never forget this. It startled me. And I'm sure my dad has no recollection of this ever, right? But I happened to be sitting, the bed was situated such, and like the room was small, that like where I was sitting on the bed, I could see out to the hallway. And my mom had closed the door over. My dad walked by and kind of just looked at us. And it felt so like almost, this is going to sound intense, but like evil. Like it was just this look of like, what are you guys doing? And my mom, I mean, I know Joey and I'll do the rosary with the kids, and there's two of us, and it's like, it's just crazy sometimes because they're crying and whatever. And, it wasn't our normal routine, right? My mom was trying, and bless her heart, like my mom was really trying, and we just weren't interested. And I was kind of like, well, dad's not doing this. Why do we have to be doing this? It's totally different. So I say this, I say like, whoever is listening to this and maybe in a relationship that they think is leading to marriage and you are not equally yoked. And my mom used to talk about that all the time. She told us that all the time. Girls, I pray that you will marry someone and you are equally yoked, because she lives a marriage with someone that they are not equally yoked, and the challenge that she's had in that, and now thanks be to God, like she has returned to her faith and is very, very devout, which when I tell people that my dad's an atheist and kind of our upbringing, like if you met my mom now, people would be like, are you kidding me? Like, your mom, what? Um, but it's true. And it was really hard. And so she didn't want that for us. So she always told us, find someone with whom you're equally yoked, because it's going to make all the difference. And I really admire that. It takes a lot of humility to say that. So I say that with, my mom's words of encouragement and experience to say, don't let this line of, well, if you just love the person enough, they'll convert. Like, don't be dating and engaged with this false idea that if you're just Christian enough, your future spouse, your person you're dating, surely they'll just have a conversion and they'll come to the faith, and then we'll be equally yoked. I would say big red flag. Do not enter into marriage with the thought, expectation, or hope that you are going to convert someone because you're just going to be such a great Christian spouse. Hi. Only enter into marriage if you want the person as they are today. And if as they are today is an atheist, which is what we're talking about here, the disparity of cult, they are a non-believer, make sure that that's what you want, for the whole of your life. Perhaps they will have a conversion. Amazing. But you don't know that now. So you don't make current decisions based on some hope. And the catechism here, I feel like I don't know. I'm like, because that last line, I'm like, oh, wow, that could sound misleading. The church is not also the church would not say, oh, well, just be a good Christian and you can marry someone who's not a believer at all. Because it just spent the previous 3 paragraphs. So go back up and reread what we just read, kind of telling you, hey, this is not the best idea. This is hard. This is not a really good idea. Think about this, think about this, think about this. So anyway, I didn't mean to jump in at that part of what we just read, but yeah, I feel like I've had some lived experience with this.
Do you have any idea when they got married? I'm guessing that they got married in the church.
My parents?
Yes.
They, you know what? Where did my parents? No, they did not get married in the church. In the Catholic Church?
Yes.
Oh, no. My mom was not practicing her faith. And I don't know if my dad was even going. I think he grew up Methodist. They might have had a Methodist minister. I have to remember. That's probably right. That's probably what it was. I think it was a Methodist minister. It was definitely not a Catholic mass.
So
Yeah,
did they convalidate?
Yeah, I think my mom had it convalidated later on after, again, much of a battle with my dad over it. Thanks be to God, though, he never fought. I think my mom would say this is true. I think she's told me this. I don't think my dad ever fought my mom in taking us to mass or getting our sacraments completed. He was, he would come and sit, like, I think he came to all of our, like, First Holy Communion. I don't know if he came to my confirmation. But he always, had like a slight remark about it and would make jokes and poke fun. And he calls going to mass Catholic calisthenics, because you're sitting and standing and kneeling all the time, which I think is kind of funny. Like, you are moving around, which you're definitely not being still the whole time. But anyway, yeah. I mean, I do love my dad, and he's a funny guy, and he we all pray for him, but there's so many. He did a good job in a lot of ways, and it was just this big aspect of their lives that they're still not equally yoked. I mean, they've been married for a long time now. Gosh, how long has it been? Over 40 years, 45 years. So, and they've gone through a lot in their marriage, some real hardships they've had. Most recently, they lost their oldest daughter. We lost her last year. So, yeah, besides that, their marriage has gone through a lot of ups and downs, as most marriages do, but some pretty intense ones that I don't want to share because it's not my specific business and my specific marriage on the podcast. But yeah, witnessing it as a child, I don't know. And then even, reading this, I'm like, I'm trying to think if I would ever, if I was where I'm at right now in my faith, would I consider marrying someone who, let's say the extreme here, right? The disparity of cult, wasn't even believing in God. Like, I'm not even interested in that, let alone knowing that like I'm going to have to fight this battle for my children because as a Catholic, I am obligated to baptize and educate my children in the Catholic faith. I think it would be totally different if we're talking about a Christian, like some staunch
Definitely.
Protestant who was very respectful of Catholicism and I'm very respectful of their practice. Like if we're mutually respectful and if he was on board with me raising the kids Catholic, then I feel like that would be very different, very, very different.
I think that's totally different than the circumstance you're talking about because
Yes.
that's the situation I grew up in.
Okay.
And my dad
So you tell.
converted when I was in middle school, but until then, I mean, it was up to my mom to make our make our sacraments and yeah, it even then though, like yes, they were both Christians. My mom was practicing her faith. She did the best that she could with all of the Catholic practices like rosary and that sort of thing. Um, but my dad just didn't understand, And so the support wasn't, I don't think, intentional. The lack of support, I don't think was intentional. It was just like, I don't do that kind of thing. But to kids, it very much looks like it's not important, I guess. Like
Right.
whatever
Right.
you're doing is not important because the dad is the head of the household. If the dad is not doing something, it's
Right.
like even as a little kid, you understand hierarchy. And you wouldn't describe it that way, but you just do. Like
Right.
so you naturally feel that tug, I think. And so for a child living with parents that are both Christian, but maybe not both Catholic, they're still going to feel it. And my suggestion to that would be make it as open of a conversation as possible. Like, hey, dad's not Catholic, or like we all know this, it's an elephant in the room, but like this is why dad doesn't pray rosary with us, or this is what, like, as opposed to like, well, dad's just off in the other room, or whatever. Like, you know what? No, I love that your mom said that throughout your life. Like, my prayer is that you marry someone that you're equally yoked with. Like, she was making no bones about it, right? Like,
Right.
hey,
Right.
and just that one statement explains without her over explaining or oversharing how hard her life has been and raising
Right.
kids. All she had to
Right.
do was say that. That's all and you knew, like, golly, this is so hard for her,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
it's I think that I think you can have such holy marriages without both people being Catholic. So I'm not sitting here saying, but I do think talking about two Christians versus a Christian and an atheist, like that is different. And that would be so hard. I'd be so curious. Do you have any idea when they convalidated if he just had to say he was okay with certain things or how that went?
I think it was a piece of paper. I could be wrong. I have to ask my mom. I think she had to just sign something because
But that
I think
allowed her
that's,
to go back to communion, right?
I think so. I think that's what it was. Yeah. We were living
Mhm.
overseas one time. I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it unfolded. And he had signed some paper and then she could do that. Because I think we were receiving, I don't remember. I don't remember what put it on her heart
Mhm.
to do that, but
Mhm.
yeah, she did. And I will also say too, for if people find themselves just currently in this type of a situation, the disparity of cult, um, my mom really relied on when she was practicing her faith and when she came back to the church and hasn't left it in a very long time now. Um, she was always our prayer warrior and always and really relied on Saint Joseph to be our father and to guide us as we were getting older. And I know I'm so grateful for those prayers. And I still rely on her to be praying for me and my family. But she will say that for sure. She, whenever I tell her I'm grateful for her prayers and her intercession, she just always puts it on Saint Joseph. And she's like, "Oh, Amy, Saint Joseph has taken such good care of you girls and your marriages, and I'm just so grateful." And so, yeah.
I
So
love
anyway,
that you married a Joseph. I'm sure she does
right?
too.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Yeah, so funny. I
Mhm.
know. That's really funny.
God is so, I mean, no detail is not thought of,
Right.
like
So true. Yeah, he is
Oh
definitely in the
man.
details.
I will
And
say,
oh,
yeah.
God.
Well,
No,
I was
go.
just going to say, for just thinking about my mom as well, and the way you're describing your mom, I would describe my mom very similarly. And I do feel like, I was just talking to Isabel about this today, like, God does not like the sin of whatever a sin is, but he can use that for so much beauty. And the the prayers of our mothers, I just knowing how you talk about your mom and knowing my mom, I mean, those prayers are so, that ache of their heart over their life for different instances and issues and stuff, like God uses all of that, you know? And I really value the prayers of my mom. Like I just,
Absolutely.
oh, I wouldn't be the person I am without her
Yeah.
prayers, you know?
Yeah.
So
Me either. I'm,
there's nothing like a praying mother. There
yeah,
really not.
it's so true. I know. I think sometimes my mom gets hard on herself for mistakes that she's made when we were growing up. But I'm like, Mom, I think you've covered all those with all the prayers. Like just keep praying for us. Like you're doing, yeah, no one's perfect. So I
Right.
would, yeah, I would hope that's the case. Is I think there's a difference between having that contrite heart, like a humble and contrite heart, the Lord will not spurn. And so
Mhm.
there's a beautiful grace in feeling contrition, like, wow, like I have made a mistake. Like this, my life and by my choices has not is not ultimately the most pleasing to you, Lord. Please take this, make it pleasing to you. I'm offering all this mess up to you. Make with it whatever you will. Make it beautiful because he wants to make it beautiful so he can. So, of course, that is true. That is always true, right? So, if we find ourselves wherever we're at, his mercy and grace comes to meet us. Where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. That being said, if we're not in a state yet and we're in a state of preparation for this sacrament and this lifelong union, then wow, let's think about it. This could be a big red flag. Like, okay, and if you haven't had conversations with this person that you want to marry, you think you want to marry yet, have these conversations. It goes back to a little bit. Was it last week we talked about cohabitation a little bit, Emily? I think we did. And we were reading the Catechism. Well, this goes back to like the idea of one of the reasons why I believe strongly that cohabitation is there's lots of social science to suggest that cohabitation is not good for marriage outcomes, relationships, etc. But the big thing that I see with cohabitation in my own experience is it's just these blinders. When you're living with someone that you're not married to, you are blind to a lot of things that are red flags. And or I'm blind to the opportunity to have conversations about important topics. Um, because the relationship is not well defined and you're kind of playing house and playing family and playing marriage without actually being any of those things. And the play is a lot different than the reality. And so I think just, yeah, having a rightly ordered assessment of the relationship before I'm entering into marriage is just really, really helpful. So if for whatever reason I find myself in a relationship or a situation where I'm living in a state of, dare I say it, sin, sexually active, living together with this person, I need to cut those out and take a second to step back so I can appropriately assess the state of this relationship because you will see more clearly. If you are living in a state like that, as someone who can attest, you don't see clearly. You don't see clearly. We are blinded by that, by our sin. And so to have the freedom to then assess the state of the relationship, I think is really important. I know quite a few like you who have the mixed marriages where it's a baptized non-Catholic and a baptized Catholic. I feel like in a lot of those cases, someone ends up converting, but even
Yes.
which is usually the non-Catholic converts to Catholicism. But in the cases where that doesn't happen, the non-Catholic is still church going, you know, and they have conversations and they're working through things, but it's not the same. So I have family members that I love that are not Catholic anymore. Well, they're not practicing Catholic. They're fallen away Catholics, so Protestant. And it's really hard, it's really, I think, Emily, you and I have talked about this. Like, I feel like I could talk to you more closely than I could some of my family that are Protestant because the richness and depth of Catholicism and the level of relationship you can encounter God in the Catholic Church is so much deeper and richer than in the Protestant Church. I'm sorry. It just is. Like the access to the sacraments, the conversation that we have as Catholics of this eternal family. Like we have a family in heaven. We have the Blessed Mother. We have Saint Joseph. We have all the litany, all of the saints, all of our brothers and sisters. We've got obviously God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. It's just this community and the rich teachings and the beautiful practices of the liturgy and our worship of God. Like all of these things allow this depth, this encounter with Christ and with his church through his church. It's just different. And I feel like with my Protestant friends or family, I can't tap into that richness, you know, like when you and I are having a conversation and I'm talking about something in motherhood or just in my own prayer life, you know, you will listen and we'll chat and then you'll say, I'm going to ask Mary, like, let's pray and let's ask Mary to pray for you. And like, you know, and I just find that so consoling because it's like, I need my family to come and be around me and my spiritual family to come and be around me. So I would say, well, it's definitely easier than being married to someone who's not Catholic, or not a believer at all, but would be easier to be married to someone who's just not Catholic. Even that though would be a little hard because you can't have this true total sharing of your faith. And I guess that's just individual assessment. Like how much do you want that in your marriage? To what extent is that important to you?
Well,
At
and
this
every Catholic is different, right? Like,
time.
so as we're talking about this, like, I'm also thinking about couples. I mean, in regards to like our podcast, both couples are Catholic, not both couples want to practice NFP, so I mean, there's so many levels of a practicing Catholic, right?
Right.
And, um, and so I love this line about, in 1632 that says, the example and teaching given by parents and families remain the special form of this preparation.
Yeah.
That was not how I was taught. I mean, that is it doesn't even quote unquote say special. That is the special form. The special form of preparation for marriage is given by parents and families. That
Yeah.
that sentence to me has so much to digest
Well,
because
oh, go ahead. I'm
well, I
sorry.
was just going to say, like, how much of that is just purely example over the year, right? Like, it's not like sit down, we're going to pull out the catechism, like, how much that is the special form of preparedness, like preparation is specifically is what it says. I'm just blown away by that statement personally, because there's so much richness in that one sentence, I think.
But it parallels what we read in the encyclical about educating our children in
Yes,
the matters related to human sexuality. Well, so much of that is just taught by their example at home,
I
which is
know.
so refreshing, right? Like just by our pure example, although I always tend to think of like all the bad examples I've given my kids,
I
but
love that you say
you know,
refreshing because
I'm like, well, kind of, sort of. Uh,
we're all trying.
we're all trying, right? Yes. But it's true. Like people who come from families that are healthy, like, and I feel like sometimes I feel like people just don't even believe that's possible anymore. It's like, well, no
I do
family's
too.
perfect. Well, I didn't say a perfect family. I said a healthy family, a family where, yeah, you're right. There may be, arguments and things. I don't think that's an unhealthy family. I think that's a healthy family. And then they come around and they apologize to each other. And there's this blend of love and forgiveness, and there's
It's
grace and
constant.
mercy,
It's a
and there's
constant
truth. It's
turnover of
constant.
love and
Yeah.
forgiveness.
But
That
there's
is,
faithfulness and commitment and, the forming of real relationships. Like, yeah, that is the school of learning the vocation. I think we talked about that with Father Kyle, right? It was like for a while I thought, how come priests and religious have so much time in their formation for their vocation and we get like 6 months of marriage prep and then we're just sent off into this and then realizing like, oh, well, because your whole life you grew up in a family that should have been your ultimate school of how to do family life and marriage. But the catechism even mentions here that the reality is we live in an era where there's so much brokenness in marriage and family that it's no longer sufficient to assume people are growing up with the catechetical example of what it means to have a Catholic marriage and family. And so now we need to have role models step in. We need to have parenting mentor couples. We need to have retreats and all these different things to help couples prepare for marriage because of the state of that they grew up in. So, which I'm very grateful for that. But
I just think about in the word of talking about the word healthy. Like, let's sit here and talk about these families where, it's single parents. Like, that is so common, like the brokenness. Like, we live in that society. Our friends are in those situations. Like, people we dearly love, our godchildren, like all these situations that are in our lives. Like, I am obviously not in that situation, but my take on that would be, and just like in a two-parent household, just like talking about things. Like, don't be afraid to talk about what I just go back to what your mom said. Like, don't be afraid to say things like that, because just because something did not go as you expected, no one expects divorce, right? Like, it's horrible and no one expects that for their family. But don't be afraid to say that. I didn't expect this, you guys. Like, this is what it is. I am not trying to give advice to anyone that's gone through that because I don't know what that's like. But I also think just talking about things, just this constant conversation, it's not unusual to bring these things up, like to where it's not unusual. Like, don't be afraid to just have these conversations. Just everyone there's so many things that are the elephant in the room. Like, just talk about it. And if you don't have the words, you can say that. Like, you know what? It's just hard for me to even talk about this, but like, this is not what I expected, and I really want more for you guys. And that's why I pray for this and this over you every day. Maybe it's not out loud, but these are my prayers for you, and I'm really hopeful that you'll, have the courage to pursue these things. So anyway, I don't ever want anybody to be afraid to talk to their kids about anything.
right,
Even if I think we just get hung up on not feeling like we have the words or knowing that we're not perfect. And that
right,
it just to the kids it doesn't matter. Honestly, it's more humility for the kids to see, like, mom's saying what we're all thinking. You know what I mean? Especially as you get to be a teenager, right? Like,
right,
why
right,
isn't anyone talking about these things? I guess is how I
right.
feel.
Which is another aspect of preparation for marriage and why it's such an important part of this sacrament is in the Catholic Church, we say that there's two ends to marriage, and one is a little bit better, one is more esteemed than the other, and that's the procreation and education of children. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, we think we talked about this before in the podcast, but remembering whoever I'm marrying, like what kind of a dad will they be? What kind of a mom will they be? That you are marrying someone's future parent. And that's really important. And that's really outside of you, too. I have to remember that with my own marriage, like outside of me and my happiness and just this, like, he and I, it's also, well, he also has this duty to form his children. He has his duty as father. How am I supporting him in that role? And remembering that that's a big role he has to play in other people's lives. So I think, yeah, just recognizing, if we didn't see things the way that we want to do them, well, then maybe we need to try to find examples of what we think we want, and if that's available, to talk to our future spouse again if we're in that preparation stage, and we can be planning ahead, having those tough conversations, which I don't know, I guess depends on who you are if they're tough or not, but having these important conversations, I'll say that, about really important topics, is going to help down the line. And I'll say to the section on consent, why it's so important. And this is something when I'm talking to couples that are engaged, laying out the church's teaching, I just feel so strongly that they need to know. And we talk about this with our priests, right, Emily? Like, priests, please, as you're preparing couples, like, make sure they know what they're getting into, what the sacrament entails, because they're in it for life. And when they say I do what? Like, I do to what? What am I consenting to? Knowing fully what they're doing before, because if their consent isn't present, well, that's where we get, the term annulment in the Catholic Church, which isn't a Catholic divorce. And we read this in this section here. An annulment is where that exchange of consent never existed. So the couple's marriage is actually null and void. It never existed because they did not they did not enter into the marriage saying, yes, I'm going to take you for richer or poor, in sickness and health, open to children and raising children. And something was missing there. So that's why we say that it's not Catholic divorce. It's just recognizing that this consent that should have been present wasn't actually present. And I don't know whose fault that rested on. Was it the wife? Was it the husband? Was it, or the bride, the groom, or the person witnessing for the church to their marriage? But yeah, just how important it is. Know what you're saying yes to before you say yes to it, because it's hard and it's definitely a beautiful vocation, but it's also a hard vocation. So let's not make it harder on ourselves by marrying someone that we're not equally yoked with, and or that we think, well, maybe they'll change. That was a huge thing. I remember coming back to the faith and stopping, taking a break from dating and trying to listen to wise people who were married or who had gone through divorce or whatever it was. Like, I just wanted to hear as many stories and experiences as possible. And a consistent theme I heard from everyone was, don't marry someone with the expectation that you're going to change anything about them, because you can't change anything about them. God can change things about them, but you don't enter into marriage thinking, oh, well, I'll marry you and then this will change. That's just a disaster,
That was one thing I heard a lot as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something so simple, but it really does need to be hammered in so often, because we just think like there's a sense of pride there that's like, oh yeah, if they see me doing that, and it's like, no.
Sure, right. Or it's not that big of a deal. And I guess I would love to say that to someone like, sweetie, I think especially a girl, but it could totally be a guy. If your faith and being married to someone who shares your faith is really important to you, then don't settle for someone who doesn't. Like, if that really is a big deal breaker or something that you really long to share that with somebody, like, don't settle, don't settle. That's so silly. Just don't settle, because that would be really sad. If that's on your heart, then like trust that you have that desire for a reason,
Right.
So just don't settle for the good enough, I guess. That's what I would say.
Right.
Anything else in those sections stand out to you, Emily?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this is good. Wow. I didn't even before we started recording, we kind of just read through the subtitles of the sections we're going to read. And when we both read like disparity of cult, I'm like, whoa, that's an intense, very intense word. And then reading what it meant, I was like, oh, wow. I mean, that's still like an intense expression, but okay, I understand what it means now. So yeah,
Right.
Anyhow, that's it. So we'll pick up next week with the next section. Thanks guys for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye, Emily.
Bye.
That wraps up another episode of the NFP Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us by sending us an email with your questions and stories to thenfpshow@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with more insights, tips, and heartfelt conversations about natural family planning. Until then, love responsibly.